Hi, I'm Tiffany Stead, and I am an occupational therapist at Indiana University in Indianapolis, Indiana. I have over 10 years of experience in adaptive equipment evaluations and equipment determination, as well as experience in wheelchair skills training. The following series of videos have been created for you to learn how to safely and properly perform various wheelchair skills. These skills are often endured daily, or at least frequently, for a person in a wheelchair. The videos are provided for you to have a resource of tips to work on performing these skills. Within these videos, you will gain knowledge on how to work on a particular skill safely and properly, increasing independence with wheelchair navigation. First and foremost, safety is the utmost important consideration when working on these skills. This video series ranges from basic to more complex, higher level skills, which require additional considerations and awareness. For young or new wheelchair users especially, the skills should be practiced with a skilled and trained therapist or under supervision to ensure safety and prevent potential injury. Please keep in mind that the following training videos are meant for educational and training purposes, but other avenues of skill learning are also possible. As a therapist working on these skills with your client, please remember various considerations related to your client's diagnosis that could impact practicing the skills. It's important to remember that practicing these skills in repetition can be fatiguing, and rest breaks should be given, as well as being aware of when to terminate skill practice for that session. Additional considerations may include, but are not limited to, tone management, core strength, spasticity, sensation, upper body strength, and cognition. Please keep in mind that some skills require prerequisites first, and most of the skills should be worked through in a hierarchical fashion. I'm Tiffany Stead, and this is Amelia Hartley. In this video, we will review basic maneuvering, including forward, backward, stopping, and turning. A great way to practice these skills, once you've mastered the basic movements, is to set up obstacles, such as cones, and practice maneuvering through them. Please remember to keep safety as the #1 priority when practicing these skills. Amelia will now demonstrate.
The first skill that we're going to cover is moving forward in your wheelchair. While you may already know how to push your wheelchair forward, it's important to make sure that you are using the correct motion. Using this motion will protect your shoulders and your joints in your arm to allow you to push without pain for as long as possible over the course of your life in a wheelchair. Many people, when they get in a wheelchair, are tempted to maintain constant contact on their push rooms, moving their hands forward and backwards as they push. This causes them to take many pushes and not coast in between each one. Unfortunately, this means you're taking many more pushes, which damages your shoulders and joints in your arms faster, shortening the amount of time before you develop pain and other issues. Instead, we want to make an oval motion with our hands and release at the bottom of our stroke, and then bring your hands back, allowing you to coast in between each push and get extra movement forward for each push that you take. I will now demonstrate this skill so you can see what it should look like. The next skill that we're going to discuss is moving backwards in your wheelchair. While you're unlikely to do a lot of moving backwards in your day-to-day life in a wheelchair, it's important to know how to do it effectively, and also it gives you good practice for understanding how your arms and your motions on the push wheel affect how your wheelchair moves. To move backwards, the most important thing to remember is to apply equal pressure on each push rims as you pull backwards. because otherwise you will not go straight backwards and you'll start turning. This looks like this, pulling backwards over again with equal speed on both arms. 2 tips to look out for is 1, you need to make sure that you look behind you and you're not going to hit anything. And then the other tip is that moving backwards can actually be a really good break for your shoulder muscles. If you're getting tight from moving forwards, having some time that you just move backwards will help release those muscles and may make that joint feel better. I will now demonstrate this skill. The next skill that we will discuss is stopping your wheelchair. It's important to do this correctly, or else you risk damaging your arm and shoulder, or your chair, or even both. Many people are tempted to stop their wheelchair when it's in motion using these brakes. However, this can damage your chair and cause you to not stop effectively. Instead, you should only use these brakes when your chair is already stopped in order to hold it in place, for instance, when you're stopped on a hill and don't want to roll down. If you're already in motion, there are 2 other ways to stop that are much better for your body and for your chair. The first one is to simply grab the pushrooms of your chair and hold them. This will cause you to stop very suddenly and allow you to stop efficiently in case something in front of you is blocking you or for any other reason you need to stop. If you just want to slow down or gradually slow down into a stop over a longer period of time, you can instead just apply some pressure to your pushrooms while not grabbing them completely. This will cause you to slow down and eventually stop if you have more time to do so. I will now demonstrate what both of these skills look like. The final introductory skill that we will cover in this video is turning. This is a critical skill for navigating in tight spaces as well as around the community. It all comes down to applying different pressure, speed, or direction on each of your 2 wheels. This will cause you to turn, but there are different ways to do this that cause a different speed and tightness of your turn. If you want to just turn in place, you can push forward on one wheel and pull the other, which will cause you to pivot in the direction of the wheel that you're pulling back on. If you want a little bit tighter turn, but still while you're moving forward, you will brake with one hand by pulling slowly over the push rim while continuing to push forward normally with your other hand. This will cause you to turn pretty sharply towards the hand that you are braking on. The final type of turn is much more gradual for when you're turning over a long distance. In this type of turn, you will still be pushing forward with both hands, but you will be faster on one of your hands than the other. This will cause you to turn towards the slower pushing hand.
This is a spotter strap. You're going to use the spotter strap to work on wheelies and finding that center of balance in the wheelie position. This will provide a secure point of access for you to hold on to while the wheelchair user is working on the wheelie position. You have a loop end, a handle end, and a middle piece where you can adjust the length of the strap. If you do not have a spotter strap, you can actually use a gate belt as well. Now I'm going to show you how to put the spotter strap onto the frame of your chair. Make sure before you start putting the spotter strap on that you do remove your anti-tippers first from your wheelchair frame. There are usually 2 anti-tippers on most wheelchairs. Next, you're going to take the loop end of your spotter strap and wrap it around the frame of your chair. Depending on whether you have a folding frame or rigid chair, the bottom of this may look slightly different, but no matter what, you're still going in the center here. You'll then take your handle and loop it through the hole and pull snugly. You can adjust the length of your spotter strap here on this ring. The spotter strap should be used once the wheelchair user is ready to start practicing wheelies independently. The spotter strap is used to provide extra security and safety and to prevent a fall. Make sure that your spotter strap is on snug and tight and that you are somebody that is physically able to handle the weight and the capacity of the wheelchair and the user. You also want to make sure that you as a spotter and the wheelchair user are both ready to practice. Amelia, are you ready to practice?
I'm ready.
I'm Tiffany Stead, and this is Amelia Hartley. In this video, we discuss considerations for performing a wheelie, including body mechanics and positioning, as well as some tips for getting started. Please remember to keep safety as the #1 priority when practicing these skills. Amelia will now discuss further.
The wheelie is a very important skill for wheelchair users to master. However, it can be very anxiety-provoking at first. It's important to understand, though, why it is important and when it can be used. Unfortunately, the small caster wheels at the front of wheelchairs aren't very good at navigating even small obstacles like sidewalk cracks or door thresholds. The wheelie is helpful in these instances, allowing the wheelchair user to go over these obstacles without stopping. However, if you don't do a wheelie and just fly into the obstacles at the same speed you were going previously, you may be tipped out of your chair or the chair may fall over completely. This poses a safety threat and is obviously uncomfortable for the wheelchair user. That's why it's important to master the wheelie. To master the wheelie, it's important to understand what it should look like, how to get into it, and some considerations to think about as you start practicing. The first part is what the wheelie should look like. You are likely going to be tipped back farther than you think you need to because your balance point in your wheelchair is actually pretty far back. However, once you practice, you'll get comfortable being tipped this far back. If you have core function, you can leverage that to lean forward and help you balance when you're back in your wheelchair. And you can use your eyes to make your wheelchair balance better by looking out into the horizon rather than down at the floor. In fact, if you look down at the floor, it's going to be very difficult for you to get into a wheelie and to hold it because your body is leaning forward, causing your wheelchair to tip back down. The second step is how to get into the wheelie. To do so, eventually, you'll want to be able to get into the wheelie by just a small push forward to put the caster wheels up, like this. However, at first, it may be difficult for you to do that. It may be easier to first roll backwards and then give that sharp push, because it is a little easier to get your caster wheels up that way. The third part is some tips on how to get started and what is important to think about. One big thing about the wheelie, as I mentioned earlier, is that it causes a lot of anxiety because you are tipped back and less balanced than usual. It's important, however, that the wheelchair user becomes confident and able to do this without anxiety or minimal anxiety in order to be able to progress it to more advanced wheelie skills that will be necessary in the community. To do this, we often have the wheelchair user go back into a wheelie or be brought back into a wheelie by their spotter and have them hold it there or have the spotter hold them there and have them just practice taking deep breaths, tell a story, tell a joke, different things to get them used to what it feels like to be in that position, because it is relatively different than when all your wheels are on the floor. We often will go back and forth between the wheelie position and the on the floor position with the help of a spotter as well to increase confidence. In the end, before progressing the wheelie, you really want to make sure that the wheelchair user feels confident in their ability to get into the wheelie and also feels comfortable in that tilted back position. Because if you progress too soon, they'll develop fear about doing the wheelie, and this actually creates more barriers in the community rather than less. When working with a wheelchair user who has no prior wheelie experience, one good drill to start with is simply helping them get back into the wheelie position and get comfortable there. To do this, you will want at least one spotter who will stand behind the wheelchair user to apply pressure down on the push handles to help them get back into a wheelie. An additional spotter may be necessary or helpful. This spotter would sit or kneel in front of the wheelchair user and help lift the chair from the caster wheels or this elbow right here to again facilitate tipping them back into the wheelie position. Once they are tipped back, the spotters will help them hold that wheelie position while they practice holding their push rims and just getting comfortable. This is where you may help them take deep breaths or tell a story to help with anxiety if they have that, or just practice lifting and going back all the way in a repetition so that they feel what it feels like to go back, to hold it, and then to come back down.
I'm Tiffany Stead, and this is Amelia Hartley. In this video, you will learn how to perform a wheelie, as well as several different applications of the wheelie that will be important when navigating the community. Please remember to keep safety as the #1 priority when practicing these skills. Amelia will now discuss and demonstrate.
Once you begin to get comfortable getting into a wheelie and starting to hold it, there's a progression of skills that you can do and work on to keep progressing your comfort in a wheelie and your ability to use it in different environments. I'm going to now talk through a couple of these skills that you can work on. The first thing is just holding the wheelie in place. This can be helpful for relieving pressure, but also it's just helpful to get better at doing the wheelie and feeling comfortable at the different adjustments you can make. To do this, you'll pop your wheelie and go back just as you've been doing. Then you can work on seeing how high you can get your anti-tippers, which you can balance by leaning forward, seeing if you can hold it while your back is against your backrest and while you lean forward. You can also practice moving your hands around on your push rims to see if you can continue to balance while doing that. I often like to challenge myself, especially when I was learning a wheelie, to hold it for as long as possible and see if I can beat my time or see how high I can get my caster wheels off the ground or different metrics so that you can make a little competition with yourself to have fun while practicing. However, it's important to note that safety is always most important. So when you're practicing this until you are very comfortable with it, you should still have your spotter behind you and be utilizing a spotter strap or other spotting techniques to make sure that you do not get injured. The last skill in our wheelie progression is a wheelie pop-up. This is actually a very useful skill for navigating the community and is one that leads into overcoming bigger obstacles like sidewalk curbs. In the wheelie pop-up, you're going to be moving forward as you would normally, pushing your wheelchair with all your wheels on the ground. Then, as you move forward, you're going to give a small push downwards on your wheels to pop up into a wheelie just temporarily and fall down your caster wheels again. This allows your caster wheels to go over a small obstacle that may be in front of you, like a sidewalk crack, and you to continue going afterwards. The next skill is moving in a wheelie. This may be helpful when you're going down ramps, but it's also just another good thing to practice to get you more comfortable in the wheelie and just in general maneuvering your wheelchair. It's going to look pretty similar to the wheelie at first. You just get up into it and make sure you find your balance point before you try moving. Then you're just going to push forward on your push rims and see if you can keep that balance. Again, it is a bit tricky at times and will be a little different for each person, but you can try adjusting your core and how far you lean forward to try to help you if you're having trouble balancing. The other part of moving in a wheelie is moving backwards. This is even more tricky because you're pulling back on the wheel, which tends to force your caster wheels down. So I recommend you start out with small pushes to see if you can get it going, and then you can progress to going faster. The next wheelie skill that you can practice is turning in a wheelie. Similar to when we discussed turning in your wheelchair, this comes from moving your different push rims at different speeds or in different directions. First, you'll want to get up in your wheelie just as you have before. Then, if you want to turn in place, you're going to push forward on one while pulling on the other. This causes you to turn towards the one that you're pulling. You can also just hold one still, as I'm doing now, just holding my left hand still and pushing forward with my right is another way to turn. This can be a little tricky, so again, keep your spotter with you when you're practicing, but it's another good way to practice your wheelie and get more comfortable in that position. While the foundational wheelie pop-up can be very useful in itself, there's a range of skills that you may want to practice within the wheelie pop-up maneuver that will help you as you advance your wheelie skills to doing curbs and other things. First of all, if you're struggling with the wheelie pop-up, slowing down your rolling forward before you do it can help you. It's a little easier to pop up into your wheelie when you're going at a slower pace. However, you may want to also practice to see if you can get your wheelie pop-up on a faster pace, because this might be helpful if you are rolling down the sidewalk going pretty fast and an unexpected obstacle, like a sidewalk crack that you didn't see earlier, pops up and you still need to get over it. And that is a safety thing that the wheelie pop-up can help with. However, you also want to think about how high you can get your caster wheels in your wheelie pop-up. This is important for when you move on to practicing going up curbs, because you will have to get your caster wheels pretty high to get up an average 6-inch curb. Thus, you may, even if you can do it at a faster speed, want to slow down and practice to see how high you can get your caster wheels. It may be helpful to have somebody video you from the side, or even set up a mirror by where you're practicing so you can kind of see how high you're going and how different adjustments affect how high you're able to do your pop-up. Again, I want to remind you that this is a different type of skill, so even if you've practiced a stationary wheelie and feel confident in it, you may want to have a spotter with you, especially when you're first attempting it, to make sure that you stay safe.
I'm Tiffany Stead, and this is Amelia Hartley. In this video, you will learn how to navigate curbs. Please remember to keep safety as the #1 priority when practicing these skills. Amelia will now discuss each skill and demonstrate.
One skill that is helpful when you're becoming independent as a wheelchair user in the community, and is also helpful for just working on your wheelies, is learning to jump a curb. Now, it can be a very anxiety-provoking task and is good to build up on. So you do want to start by having a very good foundational wheeling before even attempting this task, including the ability to do wheelie pop-ups with your caster wheels at a pretty high height, because your caster wheels will have to come 6 inches up for a standard curb. Now, when you begin to approach curbs, it's good to find a shorter curb, or many PT or OT places will have platforms that are of lower heights to start with. However, I will be demonstrating on a standard 6-inch curb today, as that's what you'll find in the community. To think about where to start on a curb, you first need to find a place that's going to set you up for success in jumping it. You want to be relatively flat rather than on an incline, because being on a hill will make it very difficult. You also want the space between you and the curb to be clear of grates, big bumps, or holes in the sidewalk, and have relatively flat pavement leading up to it without a lot of rocks or leaves or other things. Similarly, you want the surface that you're jumping up onto to also be flat without a big dip right after the curb. These things will set you up for success, whereas if you have uneven surfaces, you're much more likely to fall or just not be successful in getting up. Then you want to start about 1.5 to 2 pushes away from the curb and be lined up so that you're directly in front of it rather than at an angle. Jumping at an angle will not be successful because your wheels will hit at different times. So once you're lined up, you're going to take 2 pushes just to check that you're about in the right spot. That is a good spot. And then what you want to do is practice just seeing how high you need to get your wheels to get up on the curb. You're not trying to jump it right now, just practicing lifting your caster wheels up so you can see about how high that's going to be. Then you'll be ready to start trying to practice jumping a curb. And at this point, you'll want to tag in your spotter. When jumping the curb with a spotter, you'll have your spotter just follow behind you and walk briskly as you approach the curb, such that if you are unable to get up the curb, they can help you avoid falling backwards. I will now show you what this looks like. For going forward off a curb, you again will have your spotter stand behind you and be ready to catch you if you pop off the curb and start falling backwards in your wheelie. For going backwards off a curb, you'll want to have your spotter stand directly behind you and be ready to catch you and prevent you from falling if your wheelchair starts to tip backwards too much.
I'm Tiffany Stead, and this is Amelia Hartley. In this video, we discuss navigating the community and various environments and barriers you may encounter. Please remember to keep safety as the #1 priority when practicing these skills. Amelia will now discuss and demonstrate these skills.
One thing that you will encounter in the community is small bumps and cracks in the sidewalk or other surfaces you're navigating that will pose a risk to you if you do not identify them and navigate them safely. For example here, we have just a small bump at the start of the sidewalk. If you don't notice this and keep going without slowing down or popping a wheelie, your caster wheels may become stuck and causing you and your momentum to carry your body out of the chair and cause you to fall forward or your entire chair to tip forward depending on your speed and the size of the bump. This is a great place to practice your wheelie pop-ups and to use them in your day-to-day life. For this curb, I would approach it and then do a wheelie pop-up and keep going right over the curb. And I'll show you what that looks like now. When navigating in the community, you will frequently encounter ramps or surfaces with grades. In this case, I have a sidewalk here that is pretty steep downhill, and it'll be an excellent example of some of the skills you can use on both ramps and graded surfaces. There are two main strategies for going downhill, and the thing that you want to be sure to do is control your speed. You do not want to go super fast, as this poses a danger to yourself and also others because you don't have good control. In this example, this sidewalk leads directly into a road, and going too fast and losing control might cause me to have to go into the road and cause a safety risk. Other times you'll be on a busy sidewalk and there will be other people walking and pedestrians, and you don't want to hit them, so it's important to control your speed. There are two main strategies for going down a ramp. The first one is you can push normally and just brake with your hands, as we discussed previously in our braking video. However, if it's too steep or you want a better control of your wheelchair, you may want to navigate the ramp in a wheelie position, holding it all the way down to help you control your speed and allow you to stay more upright on the hill. And I will demonstrate what that looks like in a minute, but I also want to talk about going back up. Sometimes steep ramps pose a big challenge because it is hard to push up. If you're having trouble pushing up a ramp in the forward direction, one thing that you can try is turning around and going backwards, because sometimes it's easier to pull up the ramp rather than push. And I will demonstrate this in a minute. First, I'll show you the wheelie down the ramp. Another application of the wheelie in the community is uneven surfaces or very soft surfaces like grass, gravel, mulch, cobblestone, or other similar surfaces. Pretty much any time you find that when you're pushing forward and your caster wheels are getting stuck, making it hard to keep going, trying moving forward in a wheelie is a good thing to do. It may be a little extra difficult on these surfaces to move forward in a wheelie compared to solid surfaces like pavement, but making any progress you can while in a wheelie will still be helpful. And just make sure that once you fall down out of the wheelie forward, you go back up in the wheelie and keep going. Not only will this help you navigate the surface, but it will help you improve your wheelie skills. Here's what it looks like on grass. One thing that you may frequently encounter are doors that do not have accessible door buttons that automatically open them for you. It's a good idea to practice with these doors when you have help, such that when you're navigating independently and encounter such a door, you can still maneuver through it on your own. However, it is important to consider different doors may be different weights, and some heavy doors may still require assistance. But here are some strategies that I use to navigate doors that you can try. First, I'm going to come at an angle towards the door, making sure that the door has enough room by my side to swing open. I'll then grab the door handle, turn it, and pull, allowing it to turn my wheelchair as I pull. That will allow me to open the door with the momentum and pull myself through. And I will demonstrate this so that you can see what I'm talking about. First, I come at an angle here, making sure the door has room to swing open. Then I'm going to grab the door handle. In this case, this door handle doesn't actually move, but some will. And then use this other hand to brace the wall, allowing me to pull this open, avoiding my wheelchair. And then as it gets to this point, I'm going to allow it to turn my wheelchair for me, giving me an opening to go through the door and enter the room. Another common type of door that you'll see in the community is this type with the push bar on it rather than a traditional handle. I approach these a little differently, using some momentum to get the door started and then using the threshold to pull myself through while opening the door. Something to consider though is you don't want to hurt yourself by slamming into the door, so don't go too fast when you're approaching the door, although you may want some momentum to help you open it. This is what it looks like. I'm going to turn and go towards the door and use my momentum to get the door started opening. Once I have it open a little bit, I can take my other hand and pull myself through while continuing to push the door, allowing myself to exit.
I hope you found the videos helpful and informative, and now feel more confident in performing various wheelchair skills in your daily life or helping someone practice and enhance safe and independent wheelchair management. If you have questions or would like to learn more about wheelchair skills trainings, please reach out to me via my email address.